Hey guys, welcome back. So we are continuing our coverage on the new God Carnage vs. God Venom event, Symbiosis Necrosis, with part 2. And so because this event's doing a bit of jumping around between the Carnage series and the Venom series, I decided to make an additional playlist, so if any of you guys need to get caught up as this event continues, you'll be able to get everything all in one place. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this one, we're picking up after the events of Venom issue 31, where we saw Carnage playing a number of mind games with both Dylan and the Venom symbiote. So this time around, instead of going forward with Dylan's story, we actually double back and follow Carnage throughout these same events. But before we get into any of that, really quick, I just want to give a special thanks to Dbrand for sending over some cases and skins from their Carnage collection that includes their Arachnoplates for the launch model PS5, which I'm not taking off my console anytime soon. And in this collection, they support over 130 devices, from smartphones to consoles to laptops, and out of everything I've seen from these guys, the packaging and the products are premium. So if you're interested, I got a link below where you can head over to their site and check out the latest from Dbrand while supplies last. So with us effectively going back to the events of Venom issue 31, we're now doing this from the perspective of God Carnage, which on the surface may sound a bit redundant, but because of the way that this is done, it gives us a ton of insight on the thought process of God Carnage as he carried out these plans. So as a result, much like how we saw Dylan's crazy ending, we're now given another crazy ending that shows us what happened to Carnage. So just in case if you missed our last talk, I have a link for you down in the description so you can check that out and it'll get you caught right up. Because when Symbiosis Necrosis Part 1 kicked off, we saw Carnage go after Jack Jr., who is the son of the police officer that Eddie killed not long after first getting the Venom symbiote. Because after initially bonding, this was their first kill together, which for starters is part of the reason why Carnage went after that cop's son, as a way to lure out Dylan while showing him the dark past of both Eddie Brock and the Venom symbiote. And following this, Carnage made his way to Dylan's home, just after Dylan left to make his way to the warehouse for the job interview, which is now where he came across Miss Mitchell, Dylan's landlord, who, like we're told before, when she first saw Carnage, or really Cletus, she thought he was handsome and charming, so when he came looking for Eddie, she just let him in. Which of course, as we know, this didn't play out too well for her, cause just moments later, she got tied up as Carnage went on to set the stage with the body of Officer Jack Jr., along with the message that would lead Venom and Dylan back to the church where it all began. But while Carnage is setting this up, him and Cletus are having a bit of a back and forth, because even now this Cletus who Carnage made, who he later added to the memories and what was left of the original Cletus Kasady, he acknowledges that there's a level of fear between the two of them when it comes to Eddie Brock and the Venom symbiote. But it's not so much of the case where they fear Eddie and Venom, but it's more so the case of them fearing what Eddie and Venom will become. And even after taking that into account, Cletus isn't sure if the fear is coming from a place where Carnage is more concerned or more afraid of what they will be or what they won't be when this is all said and done. But this whole time, Carnage is just telling Cletus that it doesn't matter. Both are gonna die, both Eddie and Venom, which then has Cletus like, well, what if we don't find them? Or more so, find Eddie. So Carnage tells Cletus, we will find him, we will smoke him out. Which again, just goes back to the reasoning behind why Carnage is going through all this trouble to get into Dylan and the Venom symbiote's head and lure out Eddie. So after this, next they make their way to Dylan's job, where at this point, Dylan, he's got the job, he started working, and it's right here where Carnage just walks into the next room, where at first, Dylan's boss, Mr. Gunderson, he has no clue what's going on. So as soon as he sees Cletus, he's just like, hey man, what you doing in here? This is private property, you gotta go. Which then leads to a swift death for everybody who was in that room. Which again, this just goes back to how even though Dylan was in the next room, he didn't hear a thing. And his first indication of anything out of the normal going on started right here when Carnage started sending those cryptic messages. That was then followed by Dylan's co-worker opening the door and catching a headshot. And this time, now that we're following Carnage, we're shown that the fear and the confusion that he's inducing and causing Dylan to go through, it's also being used as another tool, with Carnage hoping that Eddie will sense Dylan's fear and come out to save him. But again, just as a reminder, at this point in time, Carnage doesn't know about Eddie's journey into the garden, with Eddie going back and forward throughout time and space, because God Carnage just got back to Earth 616 after Extreme Venom Burst and Death of the Venom Burst. So as far as he's aware, Eddie could be out there anywhere. So that's why he's both asking Dylan where's Eddie, while also trying to lure Eddie out by scaring Dylan. Which from here, this is what leads to Dylan and the Venom symbiote leaving the warehouse and going back home, where they find the landlord tied up and Jack Jr.'s body. While Carnage, on the other hand, he makes his way to Our Lady of Saints Church, where at this point I think it's pretty obvious what happened here, because right now we see how this church is just packed with people, or at least there's a decent number of people who are here. But also in this moment we see Cletus talking to one of the ministers, as he tells him, "You see, a broken man once walked into this church, noose in hand, ready to die. He cried, he killed, and he walked out a devil. Tonight he returns, but first, we need to redecorate," which of course is what leads to all the bodies that we saw sitting in the congregation. Later that evening, when Dylan and the Venom symbiote made their way there. Because again, with setting this stage, so to speak, God Carnage thought at this point, either Eddie was going to come here instead of Dylan, Eddie was going to come here with Dylan, or at the least, Eddie would try to come and save Dylan. But none of those things happened, so this is why Carnage went back to the mind games, which next led to Cletus talking about bad fathers, which was followed up by one of the ministers hanging, which was obviously a trap to get Venom weakened by the church bell, since God Carnage is completely unbothered by the insane vibrations coming from it, since God Carnage had long gotten rid of that weakness. So now when he attacks Venom, Carnage now has the additional advantage. So from here, in addition to what we saw before, with Carnage mentioning and weighing just before searching through the mind of the Venom symbiote so he can show Dylan how Venom contributed to the death of his mother, it's here where we also see that in addition, Carnage was going through Dylan's mind in hopes of discovering Eddie's location. And it's pretty crazy because at the same time where Carnage is showing Dylan the dark history between the Venom symbiote and Eddie Brock as well as Anne Wang, Carnage is also going through Dylan's memories to find out where's Eddie, where now Carnage is seeing all of the events that Dylan witnessed that we saw take place in the current Venom series. And on top of that, because Dylan is bonded with the Venom symbiote, this shows Carnage a lot. Because prior to this, the things that Dylan had witnessed himself, in addition to what he'd learned through Venom's hive, as far as things connected to Eddie, at this time, Dylan really hasn't made sense of all of it. But as soon as Carnage sees all these details, Carnage puts it together and he understands that Eddie is no longer in the present. But the way that Carnage sees it, he sees it like Eddie is hiding in time. Though as we know, Eddie's not hiding, he's trying to stop Meridius and save his son. But this is where it gets crazy, because next, Carnage kills Dylan like we saw before, but now that we're looking at this from a different perspective, it's here where we see in this moment, Cletus wondering if Carnage is keeping things from him. Because in these final moments, Carnage feels the pull, he feels the temptation, the call of water, which in itself is access to the eventuality. And Cletus feels it too, because they're bonded. But right here as Carnage goes for it, as he falls for the temptation, so to speak, he separates from Cletus, who for a while now, the two of them, they were one. But right here, Carnage separates from Cletus, effectively using Dylan as a doorway to get to Eddie. This catches Cletus off guard, because God Carnage is leaving him behind. And just for a moment here we get a brief look at Carnage heading through the Unbeyond, while Cletus is just left behind at Our Lady of Saints Church. And right here as we see Cletus just saying, "Where did you go? Carnage, where are you?" We're told that Cletus can still feel his other far away. The symbiote is trapped in wet darkness, desperately fighting to break free. And when he does, when Carnage breaks through the flesh of Meridius, when the sweet scent of the garden envelops him, somewhere far away, Cletus thinks, "What about me?" Because now, following Carnage, this takes us back to the events of Venom issue 30, with Carnage finally being face to face with the Eddie he's been looking for. But now it kind of raises the question of, at what cost? Is Cletus Kasady now a human symbiote too? And if so, what's going to happen now that he feels deserted? Even though original Cletus left Carnage first for the Extrembio, though I don't think he's ready to have that conversation. But now with Carnage making his way into the far future, into the Garden of Meridius, it's here where he tells Eddie that he killed Dylan, and he's going to kill Eddie next. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.